Your father calls you into the living room the night you graduate. He's holding an envelope, not a gift for fun, not something to celebrate with. Just an envelope, slightly bent at the corners. He sits down slowly, like this moment matters more than it looks. He hands it to you and says, "This is for your future. Don't waste it. Put it somewhere safe." You open it. $3,000 in cash. You look up. He nods once. That's all. No speech, no explanation. Just certainty. You trust him completely. He spent his whole life avoiding risk. Your mother did the same. They built everything by being careful. Not fast, not bold, just careful. In their world, nothing was more important than not losing. So you listen. At 22, with a degree in your hand and no real understanding of how money actually grows, their advice doesn't feel small. It feels like protection, like a shield. You walk into a bank the next morning. The place feels quiet, official. You open a savings account. The interest rate is barely noticeable. You don't question it. No one taught you to. You deposit the money. You walk out feeling responsible. You feel safe. This is where it begins. Not with a mistake, but with trust. Age 22, the pattern begins to set. Not loudly, not dramatically, quietly, in habits. You take the job, not the one you imagined late at night during your final year. The practical one, the one that came first. $48,000 a year. Health insurance. A clear path. Predictable. Your parents smile in a way that feels like relief more than celebration. Your mother tells relatives. Your father tells his friends. In his voice, there's pride, but underneath it, something else. Assurance. Like a risk has been avoided. You start on Monday. New desk. New login. HR walks you through forms. Retirement plan. You nod along. There's a default contribution. 3%. You don't change it. You don't even think to. No one told you to think about it. The advice continues, not as a lecture, but as background noise that slowly becomes your operating system. Don't spend what you don't have. Avoid debt at all costs. Buy something stable as soon as you can. The market goes up and down. It's not reliable. Security first. You don't question it. Why would you? At 23, your savings account crosses $7,000. It feels like progress. Real progress. The number sits there, steady, unchanged except for what you add. You check it more often than you admit. At 24, it's $12,400. No debt, no missed payments. Your life looks clean, controlled, correct. You feel responsible. That feeling matters. It reinforces everything. Your 401k exists somewhere in the background. You log in once. The number is small. You log out quickly. Watching it feels unnecessary, almost risky. Your focus is stability, predictability, not growth. And for a while it works. Nothing breaks. Nothing goes wrong. You avoid the mistakes you've heard stories about. Friends with credit card balances. People switching jobs too quickly. Someone who tried trading stocks and lost money. You stay steady. At 26, the conversation shifts. Your parents start asking different questions. Have you thought about buying something? Rent is just money disappearing. You're ready now. You start looking. Not because you're excited, but because it feels like the next correct step. At 27, you find it. A house that fits the idea of what a house should be. 3 bedrooms. Quiet street. Nothing flashy. Everything solid. Your parents walk through it slowly. Your mother touches the walls, the counters, the cabinets. She nods in approval. This is good, she says. That word again. Good. You put 10% down. Almost everything you've saved. Years of discipline converted into one transaction. Your savings drop sharply. The number you use to check every week becomes smaller overnight. You tell yourself it's normal. It's part of the process. The mortgage is $1,750 a month. With everything included, it climbs past $2,100. Your salary is now $60,000 after a couple of raises. It sounds like progress. It is progress. But the math tightens. You calculate your monthly expenses more carefully now. Mortgage, utilities, insurance, car, groceries. What's left is thinner than you expected. Around $700. Some months less. You still contribute to your 401k. Still 3%. Still unchanged. You don't invest anywhere else. You remember what you were told. The market is unpredictable. People lose money. Better to keep what you have. So you keep it. Your savings rebuild slowly. $3,000. Then $4,500. Then $5,200. It feels fragile this time. Not like before. At work, someone mentions investing casually. A coworker your age. He talks about putting money into funds. Long-term growth. Compounding. You listen, but you don't engage. It sounds complicated. Slightly risky. You already have a system that works. Or at least, it hasn't failed yet. By 28, your house has gained some value. You've built equity. On paper, your net worth is growing. You look at that number occasionally. It feels reassuring, like proof that you're moving forward. But it's not liquid, not usable, not something you can touch. Your savings account sits at just over $6,000. The interest is barely noticeable. A few dollars here and there. You don't question it, because the goal was never to grow fast. The goal was to not fall, and you haven't fallen. Not once. The first rule settles in quietly. Stability feels like progress, even when nothing is expanding. Age 30, the first crack appears. Not in your life, in your certainty. It starts small. A conversation you didn't expect to matter. A friend you used to work with invites you to dinner. You almost cancel. You're tired. Work has been steady, predictable, slightly heavier each year. But you go. She looks the same at first. Same voice. Same laugh. But something is different. Not louder. Not obvious. Just lighter. She tells you she left her job 2 years ago. Not dramatically. No big announcement. Just a quiet decision after months of planning. She had clients lined up. A skill she trusted. A number she was aiming for. Now she works for herself. You nod. You ask questions. You try to understand it in a way that makes it feel safe. How stable is it? What if clients leave? Do you have a backup? She answers calmly, like she's already thought through every version of failure you're imagining. Then she tells you her income last year. $165,000. You don't react immediately. You take a sip of water. You let the number settle somewhere you don't have to look at directly. It's not just the amount. It's the absence of a ceiling. No manager. No fixed raise. No waiting. Just output and return. You drive home that night in silence. You think about your salary. $72,000 now. After years of consistency. Promotions. Staying. You did everything right. So why does this feel different? At 31, you start noticing things you didn't notice before. Another coworker talks about investments. Not aggressively. Just casually. Like it's normal. He mentions index funds. Long-term growth. Percentages that mean nothing to you yet. But you remember the tone. Calm. Certain. Not lucky. Not reckless. Just informed. You don't act. Not yet. You observe. At 32, the numbers start forming whether you want them to or not. Your 401k has grown. Slowly. Steadily. It's at $29,000 now. Your house has appreciated. On paper, your equity is around $38,000. Your savings account sits near $7,000. You add it all up one night. You subtract your mortgage, your remaining car loan, a small credit balance you told yourself you'd clear months ago. The number you're left with feels solid, respectable. But then you remember your friend. You do the comparison. Not emotionally, mathematically. You started in the same place. Same age, same income, same timeline, different decisions. That's the first moment it becomes clear. The difference is not effort. It's direction. You don't panic. That would be easier. Panic is loud, actionable. This is quieter. You just feel aware. At 33, you consider change. Briefly. Maybe investing more. Maybe learning. You open a few articles. Watch a few videos. Terms you don't fully understand. Risk tolerance. Asset allocation. Long-term returns. It feels like a language you should have learned earlier. You close the tabs. You tell yourself you'll come back to it. You don't. At 35, something shifts. Not outside. Inside. You open a spreadsheet. You don't know exactly what you're building. You just start entering numbers. Salary. Savings. Retirement account. Expenses. Then projections. If you keep going like this, you let the formula run. The number appears. It's not bad. That's the problem. It's not bad enough to force change, but it's not strong enough to feel free. You adjust variables. What if you increase contributions? What if you cut spending? What if you get another raise? The number improves. Slightly, but not dramatically. You sit there longer than you expected. At 36, life interrupts. The house needs repairs. Not optional ones. Necessary ones. $5,800. You hesitate. Your savings can cover part of it. Not all. You use your credit card. You tell yourself it's temporary. You'll pay it off quickly. But the balance lingers longer than planned. The interest rate is high. Higher than you ever paid attention to before. Now you notice. Now it matters. You remember the advice. Avoid debt. You did. Until you couldn't. That realization sits heavier than the number itself. At 37, the feeling becomes clearer. You're stable. Undeniably. Bills are paid. Life is functioning. Nothing is collapsing, but nothing is accelerating either. You're not falling behind in a visible way. You're just not moving ahead in a meaningful one. And that space in between, no one prepared you for that. It's not failure. It's not success. It's something quieter, more exhausting. At 38, you revisit the spreadsheet. This time, you don't just look at where you are. You look at where this leads. Years stretch forward. Numbers increase slowly. The line moves upward, but gently, too gently. You understand something now that you didn't before. Time doesn't just pass. It compounds decisions. Every year you stayed safe didn't just protect you. It positioned you. And positioning over time becomes outcome. The second rule settles in. Playing it safe has a cost. It just doesn't show up immediately. Age 40, the questions stop being optional. They don't arrive all at once. They build, quietly, over months. Small moments that don't seem connected until one day they are. A conversation here, a number there, a thought you can't unthink. At 41, you start paying attention in a way you didn't before. Not casually, intentionally. You log into your accounts more often. You don't just check balances. You study them. Your 401k has crossed $85,000. Your savings account sits at $11,000. Your home equity has grown. On paper, it looks strong. Around $95,000 now. You add everything together. The total feels significant. It should feel like progress. And it does. But only partially. Because now you understand what that number has to do. It doesn't just represent what you've built. It represents what will have to sustain you. For decades. At 42, the awareness sharpens. You attend a small gathering. Nothing formal. Just people talking. Someone mentions retirement planning. Not jokingly. Seriously. They talk about contribution limits, withdrawal strategies, inflation. Words that used to feel distant now feel immediate. You go home and open your laptop. You search for a retirement calculator. You hesitate before entering your numbers. Then you do it anyway. Age, income, savings, contributions. You pause at the return rate. You choose something conservative, something that feels realistic. You press calculate. The number appears. You don't react at first. You read it again. You adjust inputs. Run it again. Same result. Not bad. Not catastrophic. But not enough to support the version of life you assumed you were building. You sit there longer than expected. The room feels quiet in a different way now. At 43, you try to change course. You increase your contributions. More than before. It requires adjustments. You cut back in small areas. Delay things you would have said yes to before. It feels responsible. It also feels late. You start learning. Slowly. Intentionally this time. Investing concepts that once felt intimidating begin to make sense. Not because they've changed. Because you have. You realize something uncomfortable. You could have understood this years ago. Nothing was stopping you. Except the belief that you didn't need to. At 44, the contrast becomes unavoidable. Not with everyone. With specific people. The ones who made different decisions early. They don't talk about money the same way. Not cautiously. Not fearfully. They talk about options. Flexibility. Time. You notice how they make decisions. Not just what they choose. How they think. And you recognize the gap. It's not intelligence. It's exposure. They learned earlier. They acted earlier. That's it. That's the difference. At 45, it settles fully. Not as panic, as clarity. You sit at your kitchen table one evening. No urgency, no crisis, just awareness. You open your accounts again. Same numbers, slightly higher. You open the calculator again. This time, you don't expect a different answer. You just want to understand it. Fully. What happens if nothing changes? You let it run. The projection appears. It's stable, predictable, controlled. It leads to a life that works. A life that is covered, but not expansive, not flexible, not free. You close the laptop. You sit there for a moment longer. There's no dramatic reaction, no sudden decision, just a quiet recognition. You followed every instruction carefully. You avoided the obvious mistakes. You built something real, but you also limited something invisible. Possibility. And the realization isn't loud. It doesn't demand attention. It just stays with you. In the background. Consistent. Clear. You think about your parents. Their advice. Their intentions. They weren't trying to hold you back. They were trying to protect you. From loss. From uncertainty. From the things they experienced themselves. And they succeeded. You didn't lose everything. You didn't make catastrophic mistakes. You stayed intact. But protection and growth are not the same system. They overlap sometimes, but not always. And you were operating in one while expecting the results of the other. That's the shift. That's the realization. Not that you were wrong. Not that they were wrong, but that the rules you followed were designed for a different outcome. The third rule settles in. Safety preserves. It doesn't multiply. The difficult truth, the one that doesn't resolve neatly, is that your parents gave you a strategy for staying intact, and you treated it like a blueprint for getting ahead. And for a long time, in many places, those two things were the same. Survival was success. Stability was the goal. But you're living in a time where access is wider, information is everywhere, and the distance between understanding money and avoiding it quietly compounds into outcomes no one explains early enough. They didn't hide anything from you. They passed down what they knew. You followed it carefully, step by step. And now you're sitting here, years later, not in crisis, not in failure, but in awareness. The realization that the path you walked was designed to protect you, not expand you. And somewhere, right now, someone younger is in that same position, sitting across from someone they trust, being told to be careful, to stay safe, to not risk too much. And they will listen. They should listen, because the intention behind that advice is real. But if they're fortunate, they will hear something else alongside it. A second layer, the part that explains that safety is a foundation, not a finish line. That avoiding loss is not the same as building gain. That time, when left unused, doesn't pause. It compounds quietly in whatever direction you point it. You don't need to reject what you were given. You just need to understand what it was designed to do and decide what you want it to become.